Hey there, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for clicking on the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy it. I'm excited to get into this one today. We're going to talk about 90 Day Fiance, The Other Way, Season 5, Episode 4, Mad About What You Said. I'm actually really enjoying this season of The Other Way a lot more than the last one. And I think I'm also enjoying it more than before the 90 days so far. This one seems to cover like different issues or real issues more so than before the 90 days. It's a lot of just like smut and trash, I feel. So, that being said, let's get into it. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Brandon and Mary. We left off with them at the end of last episode. Grandpa was asking, what they do when they met at the airport. So now Brandon's on the spot. And he's like, oh, so, I got to the airport. We met. We talked. We met the brother. And then we drove here. He's definitely not going to tell the grandpa what had happened. He says that the grandpa has resting bee face, or he looks like a stone cold killer. So basically he's scared of the grandpa. And he's just going to play it safe. He tells him that he loves his granddaughter very much. And, meanwhile, like the brothers, they're translating. I think Mary had the brother translate so she didn't have to lie to her grandpa. And, the brothers disappointed him before, so why not? Brandon's really hoping they can be romantic in private. They've talked about it a lot. I don't think that Mary wants to have sex before marriage. I can't remember. But either way, I am pretty sure she didn't tell him about any of her values or beliefs or family values. Out of fear he would leave her for trying to set up a boundary. So now they're going to eat and tour the house that Brandon paid for. And, Mary is just pleased with how the meeting went with her grandfather. And she's relieved that he didn't mention the kissing. Like, she doesn't want to lie, but she doesn't want them to be ashamed of her and not like Brandon. So she shows him the room, and there's like a cute photo of them on the wall. And I'm just thinking, like, what a world where we can create these Photoshop memories. And she shows him the bathroom, and it looks nice enough to me at first. But then we see like all the spider webs, and she's talking about all the spiders. And she tells them they don't have hot or cold water in there. She boils water to shower. That's not a big deal to him. And, she says she did warn him stuff there is different. She shows him the grandparents' room and all the bugs. They have quite a bit of bugs and spiders and rats and geckos. She says it's very loud when it rains. But she just keeps saying, over there in the Philippines, they don't live like Americans. Plus, it's very humid and hot. That's like perfect weather for those creatures. I wouldn't enjoy it. I'm terrified of critters, but they see this like big, huge, scary looking spider, and she actually says, "That's a small one. They're a lot bigger than that." So they do have like a nice TV and a nice dresser. I mean, this house isn't really bad at all. Like, it's livable for sure. He says he's lived in a lot of, different situations, including a shed in his grandpa's backyard, in his car with no water. So, I mean, this is like a 5-star hotel compared to what he's used to. So she brings him out to like the kitchen dining room area and shows him like the feast they've prepared. And I'm just like so jealous because I used to work with this Filipina lady, and she made the best egg rolls and noodles, and it was so good. So I'm jealous he gets to have all this. Everyone is just kind of standing around watching him eat as he takes a bite of like Filipino chicken. And he's like, oh my gosh, who made this? And, Grandma made it. He loves it. Mary's just overjoyed that he likes it. You know, he's tired. He apologizes. Sorry he didn't eat much, you know. But if it's okay, they're going to call it a night. Obviously, at this point, I'm thinking, you know, there's no way they're going to sleep together. You better have charged your phone so she could stare at you from the other room. But, you know, all of a sudden they're in the kitchen and she changed her tune quite a bit from the airport. And she's like, yeah, you need to ask them if we could share a room. And there goes his, like, bubble bursting. Poof. And, so he goes to ask him, like, you know, a 3-year-old asking for a toy or something is how he, like, does it. And he's like, is it okay if I share a room with your granddaughter? And the grandma says, sure. Like, I did not see that coming. You know, she says it's not that they don't want them to do things like that. They want the respect and to be asked permission. She says, you know, you could share a room, but no love making, and you need to respect us. I just can't imagine someone deciding when I could partake in love making, you know? And grandma's got some control. But she says, you know, no sex before marriage is the biggest deal. But I'm thinking, like, where the hell else was Brandon supposed to sleep? Like, the grandparents are in the living room. So, I mean, he's got to sleep there unless it's on the floor. She tells him, like, what they say. He's like, oh, okay, I got it. He gives no F's. Like, if he can touch her and get in on that, he's gonna. But he just says, you know, okay, that's fair. But in his interview, he just lets out, like, a big sigh, like, you know, and he didn't expect her grandparents to be living with them, but the typhoon destroyed their home. And he understands that, but they deserve privacy. You know, they've waited a long time for that. Normally at this point, I would say, you know, he knew what he was getting into. But I don't really think he did. I think she holds a lot back, you know, because she's afraid of losing him. I know I said that, but that's just what it is. She hasn't told him anything. She hasn't said what she wants, what she's comfortable with. So he's going in there thinking she wants to be a sex kitten immediately, and that's just not how it's going to go. You know, he still feels all this sexual tension build up, and he's just like trying to get some kind of intimacy tonight. Later, they're getting settled in. She shows him the bed. You know, they're finally alone together for the first time in their room. Mary's excited and nervous and shy, and she just has all these mixed emotions. So then they, you know, separate to change for bed. Brandon's like, just, it feels amazing to be alone together after all this time. He shows off these new boxers he bought for the trip, specifically for their first night. And it shows off, like, your manhood more, I guess. So apparently he needs the help. I don't know. I don't want to know. So I just feel like he's really clouded by, like, horniness. And, like, he doesn't think, wow, she's never slept with someone before. This was her first kiss. Like, maybe he needs to give her some time. He does say, like, he respects that she's a virgin. And even though her grandparents need permission for everything, you know, she already broke the rules once, so he's hoping for some intimacy. You know, he goes in about how they were, like, very sexually active on the phone. So he imagined their first night being, you know, freaky and steamy and all that stuff. And, you know, he tells her, you know, normally we'd be on the phone right now, but we're together in bed. He's like, I know I asked your grandparents for permission, and they said, you know, no funny business. So, and then, bam, super loud gecko noises. And they kind of just, like, pause. Oh, it's a gecko. And he's saying, you know, he doesn't want to be rude or disrespectful, but do you see the night changing? And she's like, well, maybe we're tired, so we'll just go to sleep. She tells him she's nervous. He's like, is it about your grandparents, or is it just being intimate in general? You know, I think it's just all of it. He says he understands and he's respectful. She says like she knows how they've been on the phone, but in person it's different. And exactly what I just said. It's their first time meeting and kissing, and it's all this first for her, and she needs some time. And now that he's there, her grandparents are there, it's awkward. And she hasn't told him she wants to wait till getting married. So they decide to just go to sleep. He's disappointed, but he wants to be respectful. So, after 2 years, a little longer is okay. And then she makes them sleep with their heads at opposite ends of the bed. And he's like, we've been on the phone for 24/7. He's pooped in front of her. They've gotten down on the phone. Like, she shouldn't be uncomfortable. He should at least be allowed to touch her and hold her and cuddle her. But he just can't. And I got news for you, Brandon. You don't get to decide, like, if she should be comfortable or not. That's up to her. So, lay with your head on the opposite end of the bed. Smell her feet. Get kicked in the face. Whatever you got to do. You wanted this. So, anyway, I'm sure that everything's going to explode next week. Can't wait to see that. I always enjoy a good culture shock. Okay, guys, we made it 3 episodes without having to see Danielle and Johan. But guess what? We were blessed with them this week. So, they're on a beach, appearing to have a good time. He's squirting her with the water gun. She's, like, being playful about it. She's giving us the little recap. She now lives in the Dominican Republic with him, and she's loving it there. She loves the weather, the beach, the slower pace, and of course her husband. And Johan's like, oh, I'm number 4. And she, she laughs. She's like, no, but we all know that he is number 4, right? She's been dreaming of living on the beach, eating mangoes for a while now. I don't think it mattered if he was next to her or not. For those of us who don't know, they met a year and a half ago while she was on vacation, and they got married after being together 5 months. And she's lived there for 3 months at this time. And, we find out it's been hard. But we knew that. She's saying how he was so offended about her being friends with Taylin. And that answers my question of, like, when was this filmed? But it was filmed after the last tell-all. So that answers that. After, which I don't know how they filmed it that fast and got it up. But she says, after the last tell-all, they broke up, and she's saying it was a hard day. Johan was humiliated when Taylin came out on the stage. And she hurt him by his presence being there, I guess. So he wanted to humiliate her back. After that, they decided to work on things. They're going to therapy. After a few sessions, Johan finally started opening up. I wonder how many it took Danielle. So she learned that she wears her independence as an armor. And now she's learning, to be a part of a marriage and a team. But that's just really hard for her. But she thinks it's worth it to create this beautiful life with her husband. Then, they got a new family member. They got a dog, Gizmo, to start their little family, to share responsibilities. And it's going to be good prep for when they have a baby. They're, like, sitting here brushing the dog, talking about how, he's a big baby and a big child. She says he's a perfect child. And I'm just not buying this happy act for like a second. I don't think she ever takes accountability. I think it's all still Johan's fault. All she said was she's like hyper independent, basically, So the baby thing, it wasn't a big shock. For those of us like who watched last season, I don't know if they talked about it, but for sure in Love in Paradise, she was putting the bananas and oranges in the river for a fertility spell. So, she wants a baby, but with her age, it's probably going to be hard. Johan says they have lots of plans. They want to start businesses, buy a home, have children, and they're just looking to the future, not the past. I wonder if he found out that she filed bankruptcy. So she's out driving, and she's, happy to be driving because it's just scary to ride with Johan. She's driving to go pick up her friends Sandra and Lizette. They're her oldest friends from New York. Again, we've seen them a couple times. She hasn't seen them since she left, and she wants them to see her life in the Dominican Republic. So this woman is worried about Johan's driving and then literally drives into oncoming traffic because her entitled ass can't wait her turn. And then she blames it on being a New Yorker driver. And I don't even think she drove there. Didn't she say she had to pay for public transportation? I think she did. Anyway, I couldn't believe she did that. She says that her friends were concerned before she moved, and they show the flashback of the last season when they ask her what she'll do, and she says, be on the beach and eat mangoes. And she knows that her and Johan have had a rocky road, and even though they're moving forward, her friends haven't. And that typically happens. That's why you shouldn't talk about a lot of your relationship issues with close friends and family, because we forgive them, but they don't. So she just wants her friends to see how great they're doing as a couple. They get to the airport. They're all so happy to see each other. They hug. They think, Danielle looks great and happy and glowing. And they just can't wait to meet Johan. And Danielle's happy to speak English again. So they're like, how's it going, honestly? She's like, they're inseparable. They never go anywhere alone. She doesn't really have friends, and he isn't working. So then they ask about the butcher shop. And before she answers her friend, we get to the interview. She says, he used to be a personal trainer, but a few weeks after she moved to the Dominican Republic, he quit that job to devote more time to the butcher shop. We get a flashback of her seeing the butcher shop and her reaction and how she was being really rude. And she tells us that the butcher shop closed because the landlord wanted the space back. But, she believes everything happens for a reason. And I'm sure she was real happy. She wanted him to close it the day that she walked in there and saw them flies on the meat and everything. So she's kind of talking down about him again, right in front of him, saying it happened for a reason. And maybe he needs to try new business ventures. Or learn to not rent a space from someone without a contract. Duh. Anyone with common sense would know that, Johan. Like, he's in a whole different country. Do they even have leases? You don't know. So, she's back in the car. She's telling her friends she thinks Johan should privately train people in their gated community. We find out all the money's coming from Danielle and her businesses. She does online yoga. She runs retreats. She has an online mentorship program where she brings guest teachers on. And she also does spiritual teaching. Like, the woman is hustling. I got to give her that. She has jobs. And, she has to because they're living the beach life. But she is hoping, they can find a way for Johan to contribute financially. So they're like, what's a typical day like for you? So she gets up, she takes out her dog, they hang around. She wakes up at 6:30. They have breakfast. They just chill till noon. And they're like, you just have 4 hours a day to do nothing. Just BS all day. She's like, yeah, and then at noon we decide if we're going to go to the beach or the pool. They're like, you can't live like this. Like, how do you even make money? And, I guess from her online businesses. And the friends know that she's trying to paint this perfect life, but they can see through her crap. They arrive at Danielle's, and they're about to meet Johan. She just hopes they see how amazing he is and that things go smoothly. They all walk in, happy to see each other. They, hug Johann. They give the dog a gift. Her friend's like, he's a monstrosity. Or a man so, he's so beautiful and engaging and a nice smile. And they tell them they make a beautiful couple. They sit down, they're eating. And they ask Johann how everything has been for this whole relationship. He's like, in the beginning it was hard because they're from different cultures. Not everything is like sunshine and rainbows, but, they're working together to, make it work. They ask her if he thinks Danielle adapted to the life and culture there. And he says, no, she hasn't completely adjusted. They say she's strong and tough, and he tells them, when they argue, Danielle's like, I'm 42, I'm a mature woman, I support myself. And he tells her that he knows that, but she's married and she has a husband. And the friend's like, oh, you guys are putting in work to develop a beautiful relationship. But you need to listen and understand both sides and compromise. And the friends think that they love each other, but telling someone, no, you have to think like me isn't compromising. And they think eventually one day, Johann's going to put his foot down and she won't know what to do because she doesn't want a man that she can walk all over, but she wants things her way. And, they're like, oh, she told us you're not working and the butcher shop closed. He basically says what Danielle did, that the owner needs space. So they're like, well, what are you wanting to do? He wants to open a gym, which I think is more his speed than a butcher shop. That's a great idea. And they could find a space and open it together, like a training, gym, yoga studio type deal. And they're asking Johann, like, well, do you think that's possible? And he couldn't understand whatever Danielle was saying, but he's like, yeah, whatever she said, yeah, to that. And then here goes Danielle again about how Johann has so much to learn about running a business and he's got all these ideas, but his problem is execution. And she can't do it alone, so he needs to step up. So once again, Johann knows nothing, Danielle knows everything, and I just don't know why we got to see them pretend like they're on vacation mode loving each other with a puppy. Like, she hasn't changed. The stuff she's saying about him is still the same. He's immature. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't provide in any way. Everything is me. I'm always right. That's my impression of Danielle. Hope you enjoyed it. Okay, everybody, let's take a trip over to South Africa and catch up with Holly and Wayne. Her and her mom have been there for a couple days, and today they're going shopping. As soon as they step out of the house, he tells her dress is too revealing. She's like, this is the most modest dress I own. He wants her to buy more modest clothing because he's not a fan of what she's wearing. And I'm just thinking, yikes, I am not going to like this, am I? He says, dressing like that, over there, men will get the wrong picture of you. And that could put her in danger. And he says, they kind of talked about this before. Then we flash over to a video chat date that we saw a couple weeks ago. But we didn't see this part. He tells her, like, what she's wearing is too short. She needs to be safe. It's not Utah, so she's getting new clothes. Basically, I don't know if we saw it before, but I didn't remember. And I can't disagree with the safety thing. Like, not that a woman should have to care about what she wears. Men should be respectful. But after hearing about the dog and the break-ins, I'm sure harming a woman isn't that abnormal. Not sure that, like, what she's wearing would, stop them from attacking a woman. I'm sure she could be wearing anything. And if they wanted to attack her, they would. I don't think, like, that makes it more enticing. If someone wants to attack you, they're gonna. Especially like if they're saying the crime is like that. So, he says, in America we can dress how we want, but there dressing like that gets you targeted. So if she wants to be safe, she has to change it. I am just not buying this guy's excuse. Like before he said he didn't want his wife dressing like that at the airport. He didn't mention safety. He knows that she's concerned with safety. So if he says that it's a safety thing, she's going to do it. They get to the store. They're browsing. He tells her to have an open mind. She says that Wayne hates the way she dresses and he wishes that she would dress more modestly. And she gets it, but she has her own style. She loves her clothes. She loves her fashion. Moving to a foreign country, you give up a lot, and she doesn't want to give up her identity too. He's telling the sales lady her dresses are too short. She needs more modesty. Then the dress she comes out with is even shorter. So people must be able to dress like that there. If dresses like that are in the store. If it was that dangerous, they probably wouldn't encourage it. So he sees the dress. He don't like it. He starts going through the dresses that she had picked out already. He hates them because what do you know? They are short too, and one looks like a ball gown. So not only do they have one short dress, they have several. So again, I think he's just using the safety thing as a reason to scare her into a manipulation. Like, she's Rapunzel, okay? She needs a ball gown. And it's long, so what are you complaining about? The mom's trying to stop him. She's like, I want to see her try them on. They, have an interview together. She tells him if he wants her to change her clothes, fine. But, he needs to meet her halfway. Like, she's not a t-shirt girl, and she wants to be unique. She comes out in a very beautiful, it's like my favorite color too, floor-length dress. And he seems to approve. He tells her he appreciates her wanting to change her clothes. She asks if this is what he had in mind. He's like, yeah, I don't want you to be a nun. But he's afraid people will think she's single or, getting paid for favors. Things like that. She's naturally offended by that. And she's like trying to meet him in the middle. And now he's saying she looks like, a sex worker. And he doesn't want people to look at her as a piece of meat. And she's like, people need individuality. And he says, like, I want you to be safe. And she's like, I'm being respectful of you. You need to do the same for me. She's still offended. And he just keeps saying, I just want you to be safe. She goes to change. She's like shocked because she's trying to be a good sport. And he says people will think that she's a hooker, like with her clothing. She feels betrayed. She calls her mom over, for help in the dressing room. And Wayne hears that and he like scurries right over there. Like, let her be alone with her mother. And then they end it with him like listening outside of the dressing room. Not to say that that's what actually happened. So that's where they end the episode. So we get to hear more of that next week. What do you guys think? Do you think he's using it, like the safety issue, to scare her into dressing how he wants? And like, do you think it's okay for someone to control your clothing? Of course, I don't. I mean, I wear what I want. I don't care what other people wear. So, anyways, they had a little short segment, and that's all we needed because that was infuriating for me. Okay, everybody, time to get your tissues. Let's talk about Kenny and Armando. Kenny, Armando, and Hannah are off to the airport to get his mom. He says that Hannah usually spends summers in San Felipe with his parents. So his mom's going to spend some time with them and then take Hannah home with her. Armando forgot to leave his money at home, so he takes it out and he hides it under the floor mat. And Hannah's like, well, why are you doing that? And Kenny tells her that he's hiding it in case someone tries to steal it. They've been there a few weeks, and even though, Armando still does have concerns, he's starting to see the appeal of living in the big city. He likes the culture and the people. So Kenny brings up, when does Armando want to talk to his mom about possibly moving? And Armando says that there isn't a right time because she's always been nervous about the city, and he's going to try to just, take her out so she can see the surroundings. But they both think that she's going to hate it. In Kenny's interview, he says he's making some headway with Armando about moving, but he is afraid that his mom's opinion will, change his mind. And Kenny is telling him, when he met him, he wasn't happy, mostly because of his family, because of their beliefs and, what they want him to do or wanted him to do. So it isn't always best for Armando to listen to his family's opinions. He gets that, but he feels that in America, the way of thinking here is you turn 18 and your parents just let you be. In Mexico, you live to make your family happy. And that's what he's used to. So, I don't know. My mama still helps me out. I don't think, I wouldn't just kick my kids out and not care about what they were doing either. But where they live now is 4 hours away from his family. And now it would take 5 days. And he knows his mom wouldn't be thrilled with the safety issue or the distance. So they get to the airport. Hannah's very excited to see her grandma. But immediately the grandma gets in and she's like, "Are the car doors locked?" And Hannah's like, "Are you scared?" And she is. Kenny kind of rolls his eyes a little. Like, okay, here we go. So then they all go out to eat. They're all hungry. She says she had a good flight. Kenny says that his relationship with Armando's mom has come a long way, but he's worried because it is his idea to move to Mexico City, and she might be upset with him. He says that he noticed when she got there, she was clutching her purse tight, and they kind of laugh, and Armando's like, "She knows how it is here." It's her second time there. She didn't like the first time. She said she was at a market and she felt like a hand grabbing on her purse. And that's when she said she was never coming back. So they bring out the food. Hannah's excited. She gets a big old plate of fries. And Armando's mom asks him what he thinks. What he thinks of Mexico City. He says, "Part of what I want to tell you is why we're here in the city. Kenny visited before. He liked it. He wants to move there." They're talking about it to see if they can reach an agreement. And she's like, "Are you willing to move so far away?" And he's like, "Well, Kenny's insisting that we do." So, it's all Kenny's fault. She says, Armando followed Kenny once already to La Misión, and they didn't care. They saw her cry. She left anyway. They left anyway. And, now he wants to move even farther, and he just wants her to suffer. And no matter how old she is, he's still her boy. He said it was hard to move and to see her sad and to see her cry. But just to clarify, he didn't want to move. He felt like he had no choice because they didn't make him feel supported. She's just shocked that they want to move because it's so far away and they have a good life where they live. And she's just surprised he would even consider it. She said, how wasn't he supported? And he said, when he told them he was a certain way, they didn't support him. And she's like, "Did I kick you out of the house?" "No." And he's like, "You didn't kick me out, but you told me that I'm not that person." And, he was married, so he wasn't gay, basically. She just says that she was surprised. He's like, well, you didn't make me feel like you were okay with it. You didn't say we love you no matter what, just because, it surprised us and it's hard for her. And he's just like, you never let me know he was supported or loved. And she's like, well, that's how he saw it. And he's like, you never said the words. He says he didn't feel supported because he thinks they were afraid and didn't know how to approach them. And he cut them slack because they needed time. But knowing all he went through and everything, and now the mom is playing the victim, is unfair. He's like held in all this hurt over the years, and now he's ready to voice it to her. He says when he came out and went through all this stuff with Hannah's mom, no one asked him how he was or told him that they loved him or gave him a hug. He went through and got out of all of his pain alone. And she says, for Mexicans, it's more difficult to accept. And he says he knows that, but he got no affection, so he didn't have a choice but to leave. He's crying. Kenny's tearing up. I'm holding them back. The mom's crying too, but I don't feel bad for her after hearing all of that. He says that he only left because he felt he had to survive. So for her calling him out for it triggers him because he has no support there. When Kenny moved, he saw an opportunity to start fresh. Kenny asked Armando if he's okay. He says no. He's finally filling Kenny in on what his mom said, and Kenny's like, tell her it isn't about her because it has nothing to do with her. Kenny knows that she loves her son, but sometimes she doesn't see what she does to him with all this guilt trip, and she doesn't let him put his happiness or feelings first. He tells his mom it isn't about her. Just because they're there doesn't mean they made a decision to move, and he doesn't think about her and her pain, and he's going to take that into account. But, he's married now, and what Kenny wants also matters. So that was kind of hard to watch. It's really sad knowing how many people out there's families don't accept them and things like that. And Kenny's always been very supportive. And I don't think that Armando did it alone. I think Kenny helped him. But he did really suffer alone. He talked a lot about that when we first met them. And his parents took a long time to come around. Excuse me. So I could see why he's upset and why that's not really a factor in where they live. Because he's not that close to them. He feels unaccepted by his family. So, we'll probably see the end of the dinner next week. So stay tuned for that. All right, so moving on. I was actually very interested to see how this was going to go with the next couple, Julio and Kirsten. So she's all dressed up, real beautiful. She's on her way to meet the rest of his family. She's nervous after how the first meeting went, with his mom and telling her about him moving. So she knows that if he didn't tell his mom, he probably didn't tell the rest of his people and family. And now she gets to relive that with 12 other people. On the way out to the car, he decides to show her a bullet hole in the house from someone getting shot across the street. And she definitely never saw that before either. And then he says his mom was in the kitchen right after it happened. And it's strange to her that people have guns. I think she said, guns must not be a thing there, where she lives in the Netherlands. She said that she couldn't live in a place where she could get shot in her kitchen or randomly in the street. So then he says he's taking her today to his cousins to meet the rest of the family. And he's excited for her to see how close they all are. And he tells her just to be herself. And she says, yeah, I'm always myself. And then he tells her to try to be louder. And she's like, well, that's not me. I'm not going to scream words like an American. um, she says she's offended. He tells her to be more talkative because, she's laid back and she's chill, and that's just how she is. And no one ever asked her to not be herself before, and it makes her feel like he doesn't like her how she is. And, he was also like, yeah, just be yourself, except, don't be. So they finally arrive. She's stressed out. The party's in full swing. He thinks she's in for a culture shock when she meets them. They're Dominican, they're loud, they have loud music, and they're going to grill her about the relationship. And, they're not going to want him to move either. And they don't know about it in the first place. So he introduces her to his cousins and his aunt and his uncle. And, he just needs her to get along with them if they're going to be on board with him moving. Maybe they would like her more if he didn't withhold all the info with this whole time. So they're all sitting around, they're playing dominoes. And he's like, see how loud they are? This is nothing. It gets way worse. And she's like, yeah, that would give me a headache. So his cousin starts talking, saying, I know you met abroad. And then Kirsten is like, well, when did he tell you about me? And she's like, 2 weeks ago. And she can't believe it. And the cousin's like, yeah. She was just in disbelief like the rest of us. She's like, do you know we've been dating for a year? And they're like, nope. They had no idea. They're all shocked. The aunt is like, is she moving here when you get married? And this coward makes her answer the question. And she says she isn't, that he wants to move there. They're all shocked. They all tell him he can't move. They ask when he says. He tells them 3 months. They can't believe he didn't say something about this beforehand. And he's like, I am now. Do you want more than a 3-month notice? And the aunt's like, no, tradition is the woman follows the man. Kirsten's like, look, it was your idea to come to my country. Then the male cousin is like, well, with how our family is, we haven't even seen your guys' relationship. They're like, do they know that you lived with me for 2 months? And he's like, oh, did you guys know that? She's like, I told you to tell them. And then someone else is like, well, if you live there for 2 months, she should live here for 2 months and then decide. She just says no. And he's like, after everyone's reaction, he thinks her coming here a couple months isn't a bad idea. No backbone on this guy. He's not sticking by any of his decisions. He says, it might be a way to make everyone happy, except his partner. He told her and us this whole time that he wanted to live in a different country. And, he doesn't know how living in America for 2 months is going to go over with Kirsten, but she won't be happy here. They're like, you don't know our family, we're chaotic and close-knit. And, if they're so close, he should have told them about all this already. She's getting all the hate as if it wasn't his choice and what he presented to her. And she just keeps saying she doesn't want to live here. And this flip-flopper is like, well, you might like it more if you spent 2 months here like I did. And his whole family chimes in like, yeah. If she moves here, her whole life is going to be dictated by group decisions. Now all of a sudden he's changing his tune because the plan was never for her to come live here. She came here like, I'm on a vacation to meet his family before he moves to my country. He never once brought her moving here. She's angry that, he's afraid of his family and he didn't defend her or his own decisions. The family just says they want to see more of her, and she's like, yeah, definitely. So that was the end of the family, get together. She's having loads of fun on this trip. And later we get to see them again. This time they're getting ready for a Halloween party. They're dressed up as matching devils. She says, she's been here for 3 days, and before she came, she was so excited to see him and meet his family. But now this trip has been pretty awful so far. But she's holding it together. She's hiding her emotions. And she's still annoyed about earlier and how he didn't tell his family about her or how he's moving. But tonight's Halloween. She wants to put everything to the side and have fun, with him like they normally do. This is her first time ever celebrating Halloween. She says some people in the Netherlands celebrate it, but it's not as big as it is here. And she always saw these big Halloween parties in movies, so she's excited to go to one. They arrive, he starts introducing her to his crew. Mainly his best friend Vincent is there. So, he pulls Vincent aside so they can talk. He told her, he's the one who knows everything about her from the start. And I'm sure she's just in shock that he actually told somebody. So, she asked him what he thinks about Julio going over there. He says he thought it was crazy. And then, he's the one who brought Julio to the airport to go meet her on Christmas Eve. And we found out, their first day they spent together was Christmas. Vincent is like, so, you've been in person for maybe 3 months now. Do you really think you can live with him? She's like, yeah, I did it for 2 months. And he's like, yeah, how was that? And Julio, tries to say he was a good house husband. And she's like, well, you had to be. You didn't work. So apparently they had a couple fights. Mostly because of his, OCD, apparently. And she didn't clean up enough, or she missed a spot. So I'm like, what? She had to support him. He didn't work. And she had to clean everything, keep it spick and span. I don't think so. So Julio's like, yeah, it's all about compromise, and they just don't agree on small things sometimes. And usually it's the small things that blow up, is what Kirsten says. And Julio's like, well, who starts it? Basically saying she starts these little arguments. And she's like, we both do. And Vincent's just sitting there looking confused. And Kirsten's like, why do you always have to say something or have the last word? It annoys me. Vincent said, Julio never told him about the fights, so he might not be telling anyone other things too. And it's like, well, good. It's no one's damn business. Wouldn't they have little fights about the dishwasher? Why would it be? So he thinks, Julio's just sharing the good and not the bad, and he's rushing into things. And, if he wants to move there, that's great, but they shouldn't live together right away. So then he asked him, where are you going to live? As if he doesn't know. And he's like, well, her place. He's like, well, don't be offended, but what if Julio says he wants to move over there on his own because he doesn't have a friend or a family or anywhere to go if they have a fight? And she's like, you can go for a walk. Julio starts laughing and says, go for a walk. Ha ha ha. Mental walk. They both start laughing. She's not impressed. And I'm wondering, did Julio and his friend come up with this beforehand and bring it up all slick So Julio's like, babe, he does have a good point. If I lived on my own, would you be open to that? And she's like, why would you want to live alone when you have a relationship and a partner? And he's like, I don't know, privacy. She's like, what makes you say that? And he's like, well, Vincent brought it up, so now it has my attention. I really don't like people like this who have a plan, say they're going to do something, then everyone else chimes in and changes their mind, And they act like you have the problem because you were expecting them to keep their word. Like I said, he's a flip-flopper. He can't stand by his decisions. Then, he's in his interview. He says this trip has been an eye-opener for him because now he's seeing his family and everyone's concerned. Like, maybe they wouldn't be so concerned if he didn't tell them everything all at once. And, he just has more things to think about before he moves. She's like, you never said this to me. Why now? He never thought about it before, but it sounds nice. They could have sleepovers. She's just blindsided that he brought up their fights because it's normal. Everyone fights. Like, if you fight so much that you want to live separate, what's the point in being together? She's like, you should have told me you weren't sure you wanted to live with me because we fight from the beginning. So she could prepare for that. She feels like he's gaslighting her and not telling her something, and it scares her. Not sure why she would think that, seeing in real time all the secrets come out to everyone. She's telling him, I want the next step in life. I want to build something. She probably wants kids and marriage and to buy a home with, her future husband, whatever it is. And now he just hurt her because he wants to live alone. He goes to put his hand on her leg, asks her if she's good. And she's like, don't touch me because you want to live alone. So she's mad. They've spoke so much about living together. Now all of a sudden he wants to live separate. And I'm thinking, doesn't he remember he doesn't even speak the language there? He wants to get his own apartment, which I'm sure he could figure it out. But it would be nice to live with someone who could speak the language. Vincent is like, I'm sorry. And Julio's like, no, this is between us. Then he takes her aside. It doesn't make sense to her. He's making excuses to take a step back in her relationship. I'm glad she can see it for what it is and call it out for what it is. She's like, why are you saying this now? He doesn't know. It's just a thought that came to his mind from his friend. She's like, you've never said this before. All of a sudden you want to live separate. He starts stuttering on his words. He's like, I never thought about it. She's like, we're dating for a year and your friend brings it up and now it's a good idea. He's like, well, what if we have moments? Everyone has moments in fights, she says. It's normal. He doesn't see the big issue. She's like, you don't want to sleep together. It's like, we can, sleep together and just live separate. And she's like, yeah, sleep together 5 nights a week and then live separate. And she's seeing a new side to him and she's not a fan. And this is not who she fell in love with. So she's like, why would I have a relationship with you if you don't want to live with me? He kind of shrugs and she's like, okay, live separate. See what happens. So at this point, he says he doesn't want to lose her. She's like, well, maybe you will if you don't want to live with me. So, then he's like, he thinks they can make it work. He's trying to do right by her, do all the things he promised. But he needs to think about some things. Once again, he's hurting her. He says he's sorry and they still have 3 months and he knows they're going to be good. But now, he's having second thoughts about him moving. So is she, and she just wants to go home. I think he is completely wrong in this situation. He's lied to everybody. He can't stand by a decision. Like I said before, he was always planning to leave America from what he said. And she came over here. She's been honest. She's had pure intentions. He keeps putting her on the spot to his family, forcing her to say the hard things, except for with his mom, and that's because he had to speak Spanish. So I'm just not a fan of him. I'm not really a fan of any of the men on this season so far, except for Kenny and Armando, but I've always loved them. But the rest of these guys, they need to get it together. All right, guys, all aboard the crazy train. We're going to talk about Kimberly and Tajaswi, aka TJ. I think I got his name right. I'm so proud. So, picking up with them guys in the middle of an argument after she called him a dick. He's storming off, yelling, it hasn't even been 2 hours she's been here, and she's showing her worth or something. He's out there yelling all of this at his family, saying all she's saying is everything isn't right and being rude, like it's just not going to work there. She's still up there in the apartment crying. And this is what she was afraid of, I think, like his whole family involved in these moments. Plus he's down there, we'll get to what he's saying, but he's not talking great of her because he's so upset, and it's like they're all down there yelling and bashing her in a language she doesn't understand. So that's got to be a little rough. In his interview, he's more calm, saying, he's angry because she's nitpicking everything and these are small issues. And, her bad language really hurt him. The mom's sitting on the couch with her hand on her face. Like, she's like, trying not to say nothing. Like, oh my God, already, I can't believe this. So I think, TJ's going to be sleeping on the floor with his dad soon. He says, this moment shattered his whole image of her. He was convinced that she loved him and now she broke his heart. She's crying. She told him she's appreciative, but she also told him what she wanted. She didn't feel like she was being listened to. He's out there telling his entire family how he loved her so much and he did all he could. Now he's exhausted to his core. Like, all he did was cover up his true intentions, put off everything until it was going to blow up in his face, so he can't be mad when that happens. The brother's like, we're all doing things, so what's the point of this, The brother's over it. He starts talking about the loan he has on him now that he has to repay for 7 years. He's mad that she says he's wasting money, and the mom just says a lot of people build like this. He's like, I went to a dozen shops looking for tiles, wasting my time, taking the day off, and she's still not listening. So I don't know why he's talking to everyone about this but Kim. But now he's crying, his bro's comforting him, rubbing his shoulders. YJ, his brother, says, Kim is hot-tempered and wants everything to be her choice, and that's not possible from 10,000 kilometers away. He says she started fighting and he was getting annoyed. TJ is also tired and, he thinks she's abusing him when he gives so much effort and she's willing to call the house crap, basically. And he's like, her mind is bullshit. Why would she want to live here with the whole family and deal with this all the time? I'm not saying that she's right for how she's acting or that her attitude was right about the apartment or the attitudes right now, but there might be a time where, he is wrong and they'll all still be taking his side. She'll have nobody. TJ's mad that she didn't take into account all the time he put into it, all the spare hours here, to work on it. And he just thinks she's not trying to understand that. The mom says this isn't America where you make millions of dollars and, in India you have to save every single rupee. I've never made millions of dollars, I can tell you that. I wish. I have to save every single rupee too, lady. So, she's like, he bought the expensive materials for her so she would like it. And the dad says, now she's acting like a sheik from Dubai. I assume that's like a princess. And I just hate this, that they all get to sit around and talk about her and she just can't defend herself. She's just up there crying, feeling like, it's all about him and what he's feeling and what he wants, and she doesn't feel like they're a team. She's not sure if it's a cultural thing, because in the U.S. she feels like wife and husband are partners and make decisions together. I gotta agree with that. That's what I would assume. She says that when she was talking about his family, she felt like it was going to be her versus all of them. That's how she feels now. Because, I mean, like, that's how it is at this moment. The brothers go and sit down and talk. TJ feels like Kim is overcomplicating things, and his brother is like, I feel like she's a very bad girl. That's all I know. TJ's like, I even hugged her at the airport. I cried for missing her, and, all she cared about was checking things and if they were done. She's acting like he's her servant. And I'm like, that doesn't feel good, does it? Like, my problem here with him is that he hasn't told her what he expects her to do when they get married, how she's going to have to take over, like, his mom's responsibilities, basically, and cater to the whole family. And listen to how the brother talks about her. And I think it's even worse next episode. I'm not sure. I'll be getting to that soon. So, anyway, TJ says, he's worked in the apartment 2 months and she has sacrificed things. She's saying she sacrificed things. Like, what the hell sacrifice is this? He's just upset. His brother thinks she has the wrong definition of sacrifice because TJ is the one doing things and sacrificing for her. Because she didn't leave her entire life behind for him or anything. She just wants him to see where she's coming from. And if he doesn't want to be with her or get married, why is she there? She's giving up everything, but he doesn't care. Neither of them feel the other cares about the effort they're making. Next we know, she's walking around saging and clearing her house to clear the negative energy. It needs it, but she needs to cleanse herself first because you could see how negative she looked doing it. It's not going to help you if you don't get the negative energy out of yourself first. So she did say that TJ had texted her last night saying she could come downstairs and sleep with him, like with his mom and his brother. I'm like, oh, hell no. She told him she didn't want to talk to him. This is not how she was expecting the first night to go. And he kind of broke her heart too. She said, last night sleeping at the apartment, it was cold, there was mosquitoes. She tried to shower, there was water for 2 seconds. She can't flush the toilet. She tried to hang a tapestry over the window. It wasn't done very well. She's like, this is supposed to be my home and my safe space, and it should be able to be used. And I'm not going to lie, I'm also a chic from Dubai princess type girl. I don't think I could do it, but I'm also not moving to India. Like, she's already lived there before. She knows the deal. She knows the amenities. She said she had to boil water to shower before. So, she had to have some idea what she was getting into. She loves him and all, but all this is just an example of her not being heard. Everything she wanted for the apartment was ignored. And, I think he heard her. He just couldn't do it with his resources. But, she knows she matters. She knows her opinion matters. Last night, her guides told her they've always been there for her. And it did make her feel better. But she's still scared and all alone and getting married in a week. So, next thing we know, TJ is downstairs brushing his teeth in a luxury bathroom, complete with water. And despite that, he's not feeling good. He felt she was disrespectful to him in front of his family. And that's why he told her not to marry him. He was angry. And despite that, he still does want to marry her. He's like telling his philosophy on relationships. They span like 30 years. If you have one bad day and 29 good ones, but focus on the one bad day, or what do you do? Focus on the one bad day or the love you've had for a year. So he's made a conscious decision to start a good new day with a fresh start because he loves her. This man makes his way up the stairs wearing flip-flops that are too small, socks, so he can't even get his toes in the flip-flops. It's like, just go with just the socks. And this like little bowl with a banana and an apple. I guess that's his peace offering. He gets in there, he crawls up to her on the bed all creepily. He's like, hi. He's trying to suck up. She's mad. He's like, how are you? Fine. Are you feeling good? No. It's like, is this guy stoned? Like, why would she be good? He asks her why she's angry. And he's like, you want to continue what happened last night? I think he expected her to sweep it under the rug and be like, oh boy, a banana and an apple. Thank you so much. Like, bring me a heater maybe. Didn't this happen before with Jen and Rishi when she got to the apartment and she was freezing, didn't have no blankets, no toilet paper, no nothing? I'm telling you, this is common, I think. So she asks if they're still getting married. He says yes. She's like, okay, well, we got to work on some things. Like last night, he wasn't listening to her. He's like, I expected you to sit and talk about things calmly. And she's like, I expected that from you too. He tells her she underestimates his effort. And she's like, she didn't. Oh, and she doesn't know how hard he worked. And she says she does. She knows how hard he worked. She knows about his efforts. But she's not going to sugarcoat things. He says she was disrespectful. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And she said he was being a dick. She said she wasn't calling him a name. She was saying, like, that was his behavior. He was acting that way. She says that, that isn't a curse word. And he spells it out for her. And she's like, it means testicles. And I'm like, no, I think it's like the whole package. I don't think it's just that part. I think when I think dick, anyway, you guys know what I'm saying. I don't think that it's just the testicles. So he's like, why would you say that? And she's like, well, would you prefer me to say testicles? And then he calls her a bastard. And I'm like, wait a minute, she has a dad, sir. So she isn't a bastard. And she's like, oh, but it's okay for him to call her that. And he's like, you keep saying dick all over the place. She's like, it's not a bad word. And he's like, yeah, not for you. You're a woman. And she's like, why are you using my gender? She tells him his culture is sexist. And he's like, no, it's dignified. You can't use bad words in front of a girl. Right after he just did. And I think he also says, like, something about it's offensive to say a man's body part to him or something. I don't know. But he says they're raised different. Kim is all about herself and she claims to be spiritual and clairvoyant. But how the F is that true if she can't, respect someone's soul and emotion? She says, she cusses all the time whether she's angry or calm. She has since she was 13. Probably like most of us. Like, he's like, that doesn't make sense that he has to live his whole life worried she's going to say the word dick. And at this point, I am dying here. I am like, OMG. Like, this is an argument right now. Okay, it was hilarious. Quality programming right there. He's like, I need to be ready for that. Yup. Like, he doesn't want to be called that. It hurts him. Turns out, it hurts her when he yells and doesn't listen. He asks her what's her plan now for her life, and she doesn't have one anymore because of how he's talking to her. She's just not excited to marry him. And he's like, since you saw the apartment? And she's like, no, since the way you spoke to me. And, well, she spoke to him crappy too. he tells her complaining hurt him because he put time into it. And she's like, you didn't bring anything that mattered to me. You didn't even bring toilet paper. What is with these men forgetting the toilet paper? Like, she had nothing. She's up there freezing. No window. By herself. Upset. I'm sure she hasn't really slept. It's got to be miserable. He's like, listen. And she's like, I just want you to acknowledge that you hurt me. I need you to listen to me. You know, you didn't hear anything I just said. She just wanted him to say, yeah, maybe you wanted toilet paper or a toilet that would flush. And I understand this isn't what she wanted. She's screaming at this point, saying she wants him to say he heard her. And why can't he just say that? I mean, the whole building can hear you, lady. And, you know, he gets up and leaves, which is probably a good move. Like, this is going nowhere. She starts crying again. You know, she's cried for an entire day, so that sucks. Like, I would really want to leave. And that's it for them, too. Part 3 of the argument should be coming soon. I will be doing that episode in the next couple days. So stay tuned for that. These two at least are entertaining. I was laughing. I gotta spend my whole life worried about you calling me a dick. If that's your biggest problem, you're doing pretty well. I guess, you know, some people are more sensitive than the rest of us. But I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, if you stuck around to the end, I appreciate you. I hope you hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. And don't forget to take deep breaths and take some time for yourself. Maybe take a nice bubble bath or something. That sounds good. But I hope you guys have a good day. Talk to you later. Bye.